The most corrosive resentment you will ever face in your life will not come from your enemies. It will come from the people who loved you, and it will come precisely because they loved you. That's not a dark observation. It's a mechanism. One Nietzsche saw clearly when almost no one else was willing to look. Think about the people closest to you. A friend who knew you when you were still figuring things out. A family member who was there when you had nothing. A partner who loved the person you were before you started becoming the person you are. Some of them are proud of you. Some of them are no longer here. And some of them are still here. But something between you has gone thin. Like glass, you're afraid to press too hard. You didn't do anything wrong. You grew. And that, Nietzsche would tell you, is one of the most dangerous things a person can do inside a relationship. The resentment that forms isn't explosive. It doesn't announce itself. It comes slowly. A comment that lands slightly wrong. A silence where enthusiasm used to be. A way of referencing your past that sounds like a correction. You notice it, but you don't name it. You blame yourself, or you blame them, or you chalk it up to distance. But the mechanism underneath is something older and colder than any of that. In this video, you'll understand the 7 reasons why the people who love you today will come to resent you tomorrow, not because of anything you did to them, but because of what you became in spite of them. Understanding this won't make the loss easier, but it will make it legible. And legible is the first step to free. One of the 7, the last one, is the reason the others exist. It's the one that once you see it, you can't stop seeing it everywhere you've ever been loved. The first reason is simple, and it's brutal. Your growth made their stagnation impossible to ignore. Before you changed, you and the people around you shared a kind of agreement. Nobody said it out loud. Nobody signed anything, but it was there. We're all roughly the same. We're all stuck in roughly the same place. We all have the same limitations and the same ceiling and the same excuses. That agreement isn't a bad thing. It's how groups maintain comfort. It creates a shared floor, a mutual reality. When you start growing, changing your habits, your thinking, your income, your body, your standards, you don't just change your own position. You crack the agreement. Not intentionally, not to make a point. The crack appears anyway, because your growth is data. It tells everyone watching that the ceiling they believed in was not a ceiling. It was a choice, and that is not a comfortable piece of information to receive from someone who was supposed to be standing on the same side. Picture someone who spent years telling themselves they'd start the business one day, lose the weight one day, leave the job one day, and then someone close to them, someone who shared every single excuse, actually does it. The excuse doesn't just weaken, it fractures. Publicly, inside a relationship that was built on mutual limitation. The resentment that follows isn't about you. It's about the distance between where they are and where they no longer have permission to say they can't go. You became evidence against their own life. And people rarely forgive evidence. The second reason is harder to accept. They didn't love you. They loved the version of you that needed them. This is cold. I know it is, but sit with it for a moment. Love, in many of its most common forms, is not unconditional. It is relational. It is built around a particular dynamic. And one of the most durable dynamics is this. One person needs, the other provides. One person struggles, the other supports. That structure gives both parties something. The one who struggles gets help. The one who provides gets purpose, gets significance, gets a sense of their own necessity. When you were broke, you needed the loan. When you were lost, you needed the advice. When you were uncertain, you needed the reassurance. And when someone gave you those things, it built a relationship, a real one, with real feeling on both sides. But part of their love was not about you. Part of it was about what you required from them. Part of it was love of being needed. The moment you no longer needed them in the same way, the moment you paid off the loan, stopped asking for advice, stopped second-guessing yourself, the structure of the relationship shifted. The thing that gave them meaning inside it was gone. They didn't lose you. They lost their role, and without the role, the love had no architecture to hold it in shape. Nietzsche described what he called ressentiment, a particular kind of festering feeling that forms when people cannot express or process their own power directly. So it turns inward and then outward, as resentment toward those who appear stronger or more free. The person who once loved you as someone who needed them cannot easily tolerate you as someone who doesn't. The resentment isn't personal. It's structural. You moved. The structure collapsed. What filled the gap was something thin and brittle, carrying a weight the relationship was never designed to hold. Number 7. The last reason on this list is the root from which this one grows. It's the reason resentment forms at all in the people who are closest to you. Every reason before it is a branch from the same source. The third reason lands differently depending on how close you were. Your success removed their permission to stay comfortable. Comfort is defended more aggressively than almost any other thing. Not safety, not love, comfort. The state of low risk, low demand, low movement. Most people have built their entire life around protecting it. Every choice, every relationship, every belief about what's possible filtered through the question, does this disturb what I have? And then you disturb it. Not by confronting anyone, just by existing at a new level. Your promotion, your discipline, your standards, your ease. It doesn't have to be dramatic. You started waking up earlier. You stopped drinking. You went to therapy, and then actually used what you learned. Each of these things alone is barely noticeable. Together, they form a kind of indictment. Not one you wrote, not one you intended, but one they read anyway. There are two versions of the person who watches this happen. The first goes quiet. They pull back, create distance, minimize contact, because seeing you is seeing the gap between where they are and where they can no longer claim to be unable to go. The second doesn't go quiet. They push. They question your choices. They remind you who you used to be. They find the soft places in your new life and press on them with something that looks like concern. Both are managing the same discomfort. Both are managing it through you. The fourth reason is subtler. It works below the surface of most interactions. You stopped being the mirror they used to see themselves as potential. In close relationships, especially long ones, people use each other as mirrors. Not to see each other, to see themselves. You were someone's proof that they still had untapped potential. You were searching too. You hadn't arrived anywhere certain yet, which meant their own uncertainty was shared. Normal, not a personal failing. Then you changed. The mirror shifted. Now when they look at you, they don't see shared possibility reflected back. They see contrast, an exposed distance, and the thing that once felt like a bond, the mutual not yet, the common in progress, becomes the very thing that divides you. This is not weakness. It is a deeply human mechanism. Nietzsche argued that most people define themselves not by what they are, but by what they are not. When you were close in position, you anchored each other in a comfortable sameness. When you moved, the anchor dragged, and what had kept them still started to feel less like steadiness and more like a splinter working slowly deeper with every passing month. The fifth reason is the one that lives quietly in long-term relationships, the ones you thought were too established to be at risk. Familiarity created the illusion of ownership. The longer someone has known you, the more they believe they know you. Not the current version, the accumulated version. Every iteration of you they were present for. Failed attempts, abandoned projects, claims you made about yourself at 22 and the gap between those claims and who you visibly were. They have a file on you, and that file creates a kind of authority, quiet and unspoken, over your narrative. They feel entitled to contextualize your present self against your past self, to frame your growth as a phase, to say in the warmth of apparent closeness that they know who you really are. What that means, what they're actually doing, is using accumulated history to protect themselves from being surprised by you. The archive becomes a defense. This converts into resentment the moment you stop confirming the version they've already filed away. When the archive goes obsolete, when the person standing in front of them no longer matches the person they had every right to understand. Think about someone in your life who still tells stories about who you used to be. Not proudly, as an anchor. Remember when you were, they say. It isn't nostalgia. It's a refusal to release the old version, because releasing it means admitting they may not know you anymore. And that is its own kind of grief they haven't found language for. Here's what I want you to do right now. Think about which of these 5 reasons maps onto a real relationship in your own life. Someone whose warmth has gone thin, whose presence now has an edge it didn't used to carry. Just drop the number 1 through 5 in the comments. Nothing else needed. I want to see which one most people are actually living with right now. The 6th reason is the one almost no one admits, not even to themselves. Your contentment exposed their unlived life. It's not always your success that creates the resentment. Sometimes it's quieter than that. It's the fact that you seem at peace, that you seem, despite everything, okay, that you've found some working relationship with your own existence. That's harder to watch than wealth, harder to watch than achievement. Because achievement can be explained away. Luck, connections, timing, circumstance. But peace? Peace is interior. It's cultivated. It implies a kind of deliberate work on the self that most people keep promising themselves they'll begin and don't. Nietzsche described the unlived life as one of the heaviest things a person can carry, not because of what's in it, but because of what keeps accumulating inside it. Every choice deferred, every risk declined. Every version of themselves they decided to postpone until conditions improved. That accumulation doesn't sit still. It converts. It becomes resentment toward the person who appears to have made a different choice. Not necessarily a better choice. Just a choice. Movement. A life that is visibly being lived rather than indefinitely prepared for. Your stillness disturbs their still water. Not because you're doing anything, because you've stopped being someone who proves the waiting was justified. And now the 7th reason. The root underneath all the others. The resentment was always underneath. Love was just what sat on top. This is the one I built toward. Because if you understand this, the previous 6 stop feeling like betrayals and start feeling like inevitabilities. Nietzsche wrote at length about the foundations of human feeling, and especially about ressentiment as a force that pre-exists its target. It doesn't form because you did something. It forms in people who have been unable to fully express their own power, their own direction, their own movement through life. It pools, it accumulates in the dark, and it looks for a shape, a cause, something to attach itself to and call its reason. The love was real. I am not saying it wasn't, but underneath it, in certain people, there was always something unresolved moving slowly beneath the surface. An ambition they couldn't reach, a self-image they couldn't stabilize, a sense of their own potential that kept getting deferred and never quite dying. You didn't create that. You inherited it when they loved you. And for as long as you stayed close enough to the version of yourself that didn't disturb their interior, limited enough, uncertain enough, still enough, the love sat on top of it cleanly. When you grew past that threshold, the love didn't disappear. It shifted position. The resentment, which was always the deeper layer, surfaced. And what felt like a sudden change, a friend who turned cold, a family member who became critical, a partner who went distant and quiet, was not sudden. It was exposure, something that was always there, waiting for the right distance between you to become visible. This is Nietzsche's coldest truth. Not that people will hurt you, but that some of what you received as love was underneath a form of management, a way of holding you in a position that didn't cost them anything. When your growth made that management impossible, what was underneath surfaced and called itself disappointment. Understanding the psychology of why people resent those who grow requires holding one central fact. Resentment is a secondary feeling. It forms on top of something else. Frustration, mostly. Helplessness. The particular weight of someone who wanted more for themselves and couldn't get there, and now has to live in proximity to evidence that it was possible. The people who resent you are not, in most cases, aware of what is happening inside them. They experience it as disappointment in you, as concern, as loyalty to who you used to be. They have no clean language for the mechanism because naming it would require a degree of self-confrontation that the resentment exists specifically to prevent. You are not the problem. That needs to be said plainly without softening it. Your growth is not a crime. Your peace is not an aggression. Your success is not a theft from anyone who didn't take the same steps. The resentment you receive is not a verdict on whether you were right to change. It is a measurement of the gap between your trajectory and theirs, a gap you did not create by moving, a gap that already existed, waiting for movement to make it visible. Some of those relationships can survive this. Not if you shrink, not if you manage your visibility or dim what you've become to keep the peace. But if the other person finds their own direction, the gap closes from their side. Some of them will. Not all. Some of those relationships will end, and the ending will feel like loss, even when you understand every mechanism involved. That is not a contradiction. Loss is still loss. When you face someone whose love has turned, what is called for is not bitterness, and it is not rescue. It is clarity. You see the mechanism. You hold your own position without apology, and you leave the door open without standing in the doorway waiting. Stop explaining yourself to people who have already decided what you mean. Stop revisiting the archive of your past self to make your present self more comfortable for them. Stop apologizing for the distance your growth created. You didn't pull away. You moved forward. The gap appeared because one of you moved. That is not the same thing. When you do encounter it, name the mechanism to yourself. Identify which of the 7 reasons is operating in each relationship where you feel the chill. Is it the stagnation mirror, the lost role, the comfort permission, the archive? Naming it removes the personal sting, the sense that something must be wrong with you specifically. Nothing is wrong with you. The mechanism is working exactly as it always has. We are living through a period that accelerates all of this. Social media posts the evidence of your progress in real time. There is no longer any lag between your growth and the awareness of the people around you. Every previous generation had time to adjust to change in the people they knew. The adjustment happened slowly, over seasons and years, with enough friction to soften it. Now it happens in a feed, instantly, without the distance that used to make it bearable. The result is a distinctly modern form of resentment, faster, more visible, more easily performed. People you haven't spoken to in years register a reaction to your progress. People you see daily compare themselves to you in private and correct you in public. The compression of visibility has sharpened status anxiety into something almost automatic. The mechanism Nietzsche described formed over years in the 19th century. Now it can form in a week. This is not a reason to hide. It is a reason to understand the speed of what you're moving through. Every step forward will register somewhere, will land in someone who wasn't ready for the distance. That is the cost of movement in a world that has made stillness look like safety. The people who love you today will not all resent you tomorrow. Some of them will grow alongside you. Some will find their own direction and close the gap from their side. Some will let the love stay what it was, because they never needed your stagnation to justify their own position. Those are the ones to hold close, not because they confirm you, but because they prove that what you thought love was supposed to be, given freely, not contingent on your limitations, is real. It exists. It just isn't guaranteed by closeness or time. The rest, the ones whose warmth becomes edge, whose familiarity becomes authority, whose love turns out to have been sitting on top of something older and harder, they are not your enemies. They are people in pain that they haven't found the honesty to name. You do not owe them your regression. You owe yourself the clarity to stop carrying their verdict as if it were a fact about you. Nietzsche called self-overcoming the highest task. Not overcoming others. Not winning. Not defeating the people who resent you. Overcoming the pull of their resentment on your own direction. The pull to stay small enough to preserve the peace. The pull to calibrate how much of your growth they can see at any given moment. Resisting that pull, continuing to move even when movement costs you a relationship you valued, is what he meant by becoming who you are. Their resentment is not a stop sign. It is a marker, evidence of distance already traveled, and if you can hold it that way, not as a wound but as a coordinate, you don't just survive it, you use it. If this is the kind of thinking you come back for, subscribe. Not because a number matters, because the work of understanding why love turns, why growth costs what it costs, why people do what they do to the ones they claim to care about, that work doesn't end here. And where this channel goes next will not be where you expect.